Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Book Chat, a video series from the CH Booth Library. I'm Anne, librarian at CH Booth, and I'm here with my coworkers, Amy, Catherine, and Margaret, to talk about books. So my first book is called Hieroglyphics by Jill McCorker. It's a contemporary fiction that moves back and forth through time to tell the story of 4 characters. Married couple Lil and Frank, who bonded as a young couple by experiencing similar tragedies in their childhoods, are now retired and have moved near the house where Frank spent part of his childhood. The house is now occupied by a mother and her young son, and the story moves between each of these characters as they attempt in different ways to come to terms with their past. It's a moving and reflective story about loss and memory. There's a little humor in it too, mostly courtesy of the young son, who's about 6 years old and a little bit of a quirky character. And I think this would be a great choice for book clubs, especially because of the reflections on aging and family bonds. And I really enjoyed the story. It's going to be released later on in July, and we're going to have it at the library.
Hi, my name's Amy Schumann, and my first book is Day of Tears by Julius Lester. Now, this is a book, our physical copy, we have one in children's, we have one in the YA, but I feel it's something that even adults can read and appreciate it. It's a great gateway book if you don't think you like poetry or free verse, because this book is written in free verse and literally it couldn't be written any other way. It's told from the viewpoints of 25 different characters, but you're never confused about who's speaking. It's really well done. And it's about 2 really sad days in American history. It takes place because a man, Pierce Butler, ran up a bunch of gambling debts. And so his creditors came after him and forced him to sell all of his property to pay them back. And unfortunately for 429 people, they were considered his property. So the biggest slave auction in American history took place in 1859. And we're told this story through this book. Really well done. You hear from all the people involved. These are real people that we have records about them. The plantation owner, his wife, who was a British actress who actually left him because of her abolitionist views. Or maybe not so much her abolitionist views, but she didn't like the press she was getting for being married to a Georgia plantation owner. And a young girl, 12 years old, whose job on the plantation was to take care of the 2 young children in the family. You hear from the auctioneer, you hear from a whole bunch of the other enslaved people who, through no fault of their own, their lives begin to be torn apart, husband being sold away from wife, children from their parents, friends from friends. And this book is also available on RB Digital as an audiobook and as a regular CD audiobook in the library you request. And so that's Day of Tears by Julius Lester.
So hi everyone, my name is Catherine. I'm the YA librarian. So I'm going to be talking about some Nutmeg nominees. They've been out for a while, but they've just recently been nominated for the 2021 Nutmeg Book Awards. So the first book I'm going to talk about is called The Bells by Danielle Clayton. It's been nominated in the middle school category, and it's kind of like a dystopian fantasy. It's about a world called Orleans, where everyone is born gray except for a section of people called the Bells, which they have the power to transform people into however they want to look, into beautiful people, and that's how like the power in this world is all about being beautiful. And so the main character is a girl named Camilla, who is a belle when she turns 16. And so you kind of like uncover like the secret of this world and all this kind of stuff. So if you like the Hunger Games or the Ugly series, I think this is a really good choice. And it was just really interesting, and the world building of the book is really well done. So definitely recommend it, especially if you like fantasy. And if you're a middle schooler, I think this is a great choice.
Wow, Amy and Catherine, both of those really piqued my interest.
Also, we have several copies of the Nutmeg nominees, and we also have them available on Libby. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, we have copies, so put a hold on it.
Okay. Hi, good morning. My name's Margaret. This is my first time on the book review. I work the cert desk at the Booth Library. So my suggested book is titled The Two Lives of Lydia Bird. It's by Josie Silver. It came out in April 2020. I was getting a little squirrely by then, coming out of quarantine. And I picked this up thinking by the cover that it would be sort of a light, fun summer read. Very deceiving, pretty deep book, although you don't think that when you first read the jacket. It is about a lovely young engaged couple, late 20s. It takes place in Britain. And suddenly, by chapter 2, he dies in a car accident rushing to her birthday party. Their best friend from childhood is in the car with them. That character becomes pivotal in the book. And in her grief, Lydia begins to take sleeping pills and enter into a dream world where the day of the accident happens again and her life moves forward from there. So all the planning of her wedding and her birthday party onto what her life would have been goes on in the dream world. I was really interested by the way the chapters are just labeled asleep or awake. And you move through the book and the author does a great job of having you question if you really understand what asleep and awake mean, or if those are metaphors for a life she has chosen versus a life that she could choose to move forward to. So at first, Lydia can't get enough of this dream world. She is becoming addicted to the pills, spending most of her time in that sort of zombie state, and can't function in real life. So she begins to wean herself off of them. But what starts to happen is when she goes back to that life, she begins to see flaws in Freddie and flaws in their relationship that, of course, after he's died, she thinks was just perfect. It is in a really emotional book, but also a funny book, very bittersweet as you see the wedding be planned and then you see her get to her wedding in her dream world. I would just recommend it. It's got a lot of touching, sad, and funny parts to it. I've already passed it on to 2 people, and it was on Goodreads' top 20 books of the first 6 months of this year.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for that recommendation. The second book that I'm going to talk about is a historical fiction. It's called Now We Shall Be Entirely Free by Andrew Miller. He's an Irish writer, I think. This is a detailed, well-researched novel. It's a little bit different than the historical fiction that's been popular lately. It is a wartime setting, but it's not the typical World War I or II that's been popular. So it's set in 1809 as the main character, Captain John LaCroix, is delivered home to England from Spain, where he was injured in the Napoleonic Wars. And he is not speaking of his experiences. He's only living at his manor home with the servants. His family is not there. And a visit from a fellow soldier prompts him to flee to Scotland as it becomes apparent that something happened during the war and he is fleeing from it. And the details are gradually revealed throughout the story. So a lot of tension builds up in the story as these flashbacks talk about the experiences in the war, while some hope and almost a little love story is provided by the family that he eventually finds shelter with in Scotland. So I thought it was a really great historical novel. I've read another book by this author, which is also kind of an unusual historical take, and it's about a time that's not very familiar to me anyway, or that particular series of battles. So I found that to be interesting. And I would say you choose this title if you enjoy very detail-focused writing and also just some beautiful words and sentences, the type that I found myself going back and rereading just because they sounded so good. And there's also some interesting ideas to think about in the story. If you like to get a little deeper about, how does the past, find you? Does admitting any mistakes you've made in the past absolve you of responsibility for them? And like the title says, is it ever possible to be entirely free from your past? So I definitely would recommend that for historical fiction fans are looking for something a little bit different.
And now I have to cough. My is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. There's been several books lately.
Uh-oh, Amy froze.
Uh-oh.
Amy, are you there?
This is real life.
This is
Lately, I've been inspired by the pack horse. Oh,
feedback.
oh yes, and I just got the your internet connection is unstable warning.
Uh-oh. All right, we'll start over. We missed a little bit, but not too much.
Okay. So my next book is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. There's been several books recently inspired by the Kentucky pack horse librarians, like Giver of Stars and Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. And those books played it a bit straight, and I do mean straight. This one does not. Sarah Gailey, I followed on Twitter for a long time. I don't know why it took me so long to actually read one of their books. They're a Hugo Award winner. They are wonderful online, and the book as well is very thoughtful and moving. It's a novella that takes place in a dystopian future that looks a lot like the old cowboy culture of the American Southwest. And it's a place where librarians, and this is why I finally had to read one of their books, because the tagline is, "Are you a coward or a librarian?" Where librarians are agents of the autocratic state, where they go from outpost to outpost delivering approved materials for the citizens to read. And a young woman, Esther, is pretty well off. Her father is like the mayor of her town, but her very best friend is caught with unapproved materials and is executed. And not only that, Esther feels like she's broken inside because she feels like she had feelings for Esther, and she knows that's wrong according to this government. So she decides she's going to run off and join the librarians because they are known for being, upright agents of the state, and she figures they will fix her. So she runs away, joins the librarians, and finds out that they're not quite what she expected. This book is available in our physical collection, and it's also available on Hoopla as an audiobook. And I would tell people that if you liked Mad Max Fury Road, you'd like this book.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Read that. All right, so my next book is another Nutmeg nominee, and this one's going to be in the high school category, and it's called A Heart and a Body of the World by Deb Coletti. And this is a realistic story. It's about a girl named Annabelle who, when the book starts, she's kind of trying to move on from some kind of tragic thing that happened. You don't necessarily know what happened, but it was obviously very upsetting. So she decides she's going to run across the country. So the book takes us through this journey of her running, literally just like running long distance across the country with her grandfather following in an RV, and her family and friends like kind of following along from a distance, and just kind of like using that as like a way to heal from what happened to her. And I was interested in this book just because I'm a runner, and I find running very therapeutic, so I really related to that. But if you're not a runner, it's still like just a great story about like healing from difficult things. And I just think the writing was so well done, and it's a really good realistic story that I think a lot of people can relate to, and the character was really great. So I definitely recommend this one. And we, like I said, for the Nutmegs, we have several copies, physical copies at the library, and we also have copies on Libby for you to take out if you like ebooks. And yeah, I recommend that one.
Great. These are really good titles. These are really outside of my comfort zone, but they sound really great, probably just because of that. My next book, I went back to a psychological thriller, which I have read a lot of, but hadn't recently because I just was sort of in a rut. So I'm glad the next one that I picked up was very good. It's called The New Husband. It's by DJ Palmer, and it just came out for this month. I think it's June. It centers around the Garrity family. Nina Garrity, in particular, it's about 18 months past a tragedy where her husband has disappeared and is presumed murdered. And a new man has come into her life, Simon Fitch. He is a recent widower, always there for her, anticipates all her needs, and obviously something is going on with this guy and he is not what he seems. It really centers around the family and their prior relationship with the presumed dead husband, how each relationship with him was wanting in some part, and this new man, Simon, fills a lot of those holes. Her son gets along well with him. She is engaged to him, but her friends and her daughter do not. I feel like this book has a lot of really dark chapters. It's a study in emotional abusers, how they treat their targets, how they make them feel unsure of themselves, feel that they may be losing mental stability. They eventually isolate and control them. The characterization of the daughter, 13-year-old Maggie, who's a pivotal figure, is, I thought, really superb. She has her own story going on. She's a middle schooler who's being bullied. She's the only one who really believes that something else has happened to her dad and he might not be dead. So along that line, you think you have this book figured out, and it really turns on a dime in just less than one chapter in the middle of the book, and the rest of it is really a story you really didn't see coming. It's pretty chilling, but it's a good one. I would recommend. The New Husband, DJ Palmer.
Great, thank you. So the last book that I'm going to talk about is called Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. It's a compelling and suspenseful novel for sure. It begins with the apparent abduction of two young girls from Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. That's on the very far east near Alaska. And so the disappearance of the two girls really compounds the isolation and fears of the community, connecting the lives of neighbors, witnesses, family members, and a detective throughout the next year. So each chapter of the book is a month of the year, and each chapter also focuses on a small group of characters, and they all have some type of relation to each other or to the missing girls. I thought it was a really fantastic book on many levels, just a really good mystery to begin with, and there's also some reflections on the treatment of Indigenous people and women in the story, and I really do like this type of book that has a lot of different individual stories, and they all come together to tell one larger story. So I would say to read this book if you like a great mystery, or also just a good literary novel set in an interesting part of the world also that I really didn't know anything about. The geography of the place plays a part in the story. So it's all those things put together. It's a great choice for book clubs. The title came out in 2019 and is newly out in paperback. So we're going to be having some multiple copies of that in our recommended reads collection soon.
And our last book today is The Subtreat by Vivek Shraya. And this is a book about art, the commodification of art, of being pigeonholed, of internet culture, and ultimately it's about the difficulties of trying to find friendship as an adult. In the book is about two different women. The first one is Neela. She's an indie musician who's a fixture in her city. She's the sort of person that all the cool baristas know, oh, you're Neela, but not someone who would be on the national news as the artist of the month or anything. However, she really suddenly becomes thrown into public consciousness because a big YouTube star covers one of her songs. And so suddenly she's thrust in the spotlight. She is forced to meet this other woman, Rukmini, and they actually end up becoming great friends, but they're in competition with each other at the same time as trying to be friends. And also they're really under the microscope. And you know how things can change so quickly on the internet. The story is you never want to be the main character on Twitter for the day. And she tweets out something and it just explodes, and it just turns into a whole thing. But it's a really, it really moved me. I thought it was the sort of book where, depending on how you are, you either read it and you feel a little bit cooler through proximity, or you think, wow, my life is really boring. But, but I felt like it was rubbing off of me that I felt a little cooler by reading this book. And it's the Subtreat, and it's available on Hoopla as both a book and as an audiobook. And the other nice thing is it's a fairly short book. So all my reads today were fairly short reads.
Great.
Sounds really good.
Yeah. Okay, well, those are all the titles that we have to talk about today. They're all available at the library. They're going to be listed in a link that's going to be posted with the video if you want to search for the books or place holds on them. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next month.
Bye.
Okay.